so delighted to have been asked to host this big church read of the book Slow Down, Show Up and Pray. This is the first book I've had published. I'm also director of a charity called Renew Wellbeing. We've been helping churches over the last few years to set up quiet shared spaces where it's okay not to be okay, to help with our mental and emotional well-being. So I'm so pleased that we're going to get to read through some of this together and think about our own well-being journeys and what it means for us to live with good well-being, what it looks like for the church to get involved with the well-being journey of their communities, and more specifics about what well-being is anyway. And so it's going to be great to spend that time looking at it together over these 6 sessions and then having a chance to talk about it. My prayer and my hope is that it won't just be a book that you read, but that this will affect your life in terms of your own well-being habits, that you'll understand how important the language of prayer is to us, to all of us, in our ongoing mental and emotional health journeys. And also that as churches across the whole of the nation, we would prioritise the most isolated, the most anxious, and the language of prayer. And we begin to see a wave of well-being spreading across the nation. This is a book that has a bit of a health warning on it because there is some action to be taken, and it may be that you decide that the action to be taken that we're suggesting in this book is not for you, but I think it's probably going to mean that coming out the other side, if you've got your own mental health journey, you'll realise you're an expert. And if you haven't understood the importance of getting a language around mental and emotional health and the gospel, I'm hoping you come out the other side realising it's a key priority, particularly right now. So thank you so much for joining in with this. Really looking forward to seeing you at the first session.
For the last few weeks I've been picking up Regan from school and taking him to the park, and I found out something that he really loves to do, and actually he's really good, and we're going to show you. How old are you, Regan?
4.
And when are you going to be 5?
Nearly.
In
The 5th of February.
5th of February.
The 25th of February.
25th of February. And what can you tell us about this bike? It's cool. What can you tell me about your bike? Yeah? What's it good for? Is it good for going around this track? Yeah? And you've got a really smart hat. What's on your hat?
Fireman.
Fireman hat. So are you going to show us what you can do, Regan?
Yeah.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, go!
Psycho!
Whoa! Here he goes! Woo! Go on, Regan! Yay! Hi, Regan. That was cool. Did you go all the way to the end? How many times are you going to go today?
6. I had 3.
6? You can do 3 more? Wow!
I had 3 goes.
Come on then. Woo! That's cool. Well done, Regan. Wow. Hey, Regan, how did you get so good?
No, because I just flipped my wheel up like this.
Whoa, wow. You're cool, aren't you? Are you going to be a famous cyclist one day?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Regan's having a big drink of water now. He's done so much exercise.
I'm hungry too.
Gosh, I wonder what you're going to eat for tea tonight. You are a thirsty boy. And look, the sun's going down. You've been here for ages, Regan. Wow.
On high, He is the Lord. like unto him, never ending in days. He is the Lord, and he comes in power when we call on his name. He is the Lord. Show your power, oh Lord our God. Show your power, oh Lord our God, our God. Your gospel, O Lord, is the hope for our nation. You are the Lord. It's the power of God for our salvation. You are the Lord. We ask not for riches, but look to the cross. You are the Lord. For our inheritance, give us the lost. You are the Lord. Send your power, oh Lord our God. Send your power, oh Lord our God. Show your power, oh Lord our God. Show your power, oh Lord our God, our God. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. You're worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none besides you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. You're worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none besides you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart. Naught be or else to me save that thou art. Thou my best thought in the day and the night. Waking or sleeping, thy presence my light. Be thou my wisdom, be thou my true word. I ever with thee, and thou with me, Lord. Thou my great Father, and I thy true Son.
Last week we started a new series considering a really important question for the time we're living in at the moment. Where do we grow from here? This material produced by the Baptist Union is helping churches to think about how we can grow and share our faith effectively in a culture and world that has changed a lot, particularly over the past year with COVID-19. In my talk last week, I shared a quote from a German theologian which said that the gospel must constantly be forwarded to a new address because the recipient is repeatedly changing his place of residence. This is an important quote for us to think about. Whilst the good news about Jesus is constant and never changes, the world and the culture around us is always changing. The language we use, the way that people communicate and socialize and interact with each other is different today to how it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. In fact, the way that we communicate today is even different to 1 year ago. For example, how many of you in January 2020 had even heard of something called Zoom? Now it's one of our main forms of communication. But technology isn't all that changes in culture. I don't think I'm very old, although I am reaching a significant milestone later this year on the 22nd of October, if anyone needs to put it in their diary. It doesn't feel very long ago that I was a teenager and then a student, but already just a few years on, and when I spend time with people who are 5, 10 years younger than me, I already notice a difference in the way that they talk, the language and slang terms that are used, and the way that they communicate with each other. Esther, on the other hand, as a teacher, works in a school and is around young people all the time. While she isn't exactly the same as the young people in that school, she has learned the way that they speak and communicate, and because of that, she's more able to interact and provide the education that they need. Similarly, I grew up in Wales and moved to Nottingham 7 years ago. And you wouldn't think there would be a massive difference between living in Wales and living in Nottingham. Not many people speak Welsh in the part of Wales that I lived in, so that wasn't a big difference. But actually there were a number of cultural differences. There were differences around the way that people speak and communicate in Nottingham compared to Cardiff. I remember being very confused the first time someone called me a duck and asked me if I wanted a cob. But the longer I've lived here, the more I've got used to the different culture and often find myself asking for a cob when I'm buying my lunch in Philo's. These are just a couple of more trivial examples of the need to adapt and communicate in a culturally relevant way. But they help to make an important point. Whilst the good news we have as Christians is constant, if we never change our forms and vehicles of communication, our ways of doing and being church, then the people around us either will never have the opportunity to hear about Jesus, or they'll hear what we're saying but not understand. And so I want to focus for a minute on a few of the verses that we read in the passage from 1 Corinthians, and it's verses 19 to 23. Let me read it again. This is Paul speaking. He says, "Though I am free and belong to no one, I have made myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. To the Jews, I became like a Jew to win the Jews. To those under the law, I became like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so as to win those under the law. To those not having the law, I became like one not having the law, though I am not free from God's law, but I am under Christ's law, so as to win those not having the law. To the weak I became weak to win the weak. I have become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. I do all this for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in its blessings." In this passage, Paul's one priority is to tell people the good news about Jesus, to share the gospel. He has a single-minded determination to share the gospel at all costs. We see that later in the passage where he talks about running the race with determination. In the verses I've just read, Paul explains how he made adjustments to his own life in order to be able to make the gospel relevant to the various different groups and people that he encountered. And this was actually quite a sacrificial approach to sharing his faith. He described it as making himself a slave to everyone. To the Jews, he became a Jew. To those under the strict Jewish law, he became like one under the law in order to win them for Christ. To those not under the Jewish law, he made himself like them. This is probably talking about the Gentiles who he encountered as he travelled and planted churches in places like Corinth. To the weak, he became the weak. He became weak to win the weak. Paul became like those he was spending time with, whilst holding firm to his faith and his values in the gospel and in Jesus. He integrated with the culture around him, so that when he communicated about Jesus, the people around him not only heard and listened, but they also understood something of his message. As followers of Jesus living today, I think we've fallen into a couple of traps when it comes to sharing our faith. The first is that we've expected our main ways of being church, for example, our Sunday services, to be enough. We've lived in hope that if we make our Sunday services as attractive as possible, with a friendly welcome, good music and nice coffee, then people will come along, understand the message and come to faith. Whilst years ago people might have just walked into a church service, in today's culture that's actually quite unlikely. And so, whilst holding firm to our faith and to the gospel which doesn't change, we need to think of new ways of communicating and reaching out to those in our culture around us, of taking our message to others rather than expecting them to come to us, and finding ways of communicating our faith that will not only be heard by others but will be understood as well. Our second trap, I think, is watering down our faith in fear that we might put some people off. Over the years as a church, we've run many different groups and activities which have been brilliant at offering love and support and welcome to our community. But I've often sensed a fear or reluctance amongst us when it comes to sharing our faith, that if we come on too strong, we might put people off. Whilst we need to communicate in a relevant way, we also don't need to water down the gospel and our faith. After all, we are the church, and if people are coming to a church activity or group or service, then they should expect to hear something about our faith, and we should be bold in sharing it. And so today's message that we're going to hear from Ken Benjamin and hear him expand on now is, in this video, is all about moving the goalposts. If our current ways of doing and being church aren't enabling us to communicate our faith as effectively as we could with those outside the church, then what can we change? What new ways can we find of reaching out and sharing the gospel? Where can we move the goalposts? Let's hear what Ken Benjamin has to say about this passage.
There's a famous verse in 1 Corinthians 9 verse 22 that says this, Paul saying, "To the weak I became weak to win the weak. I've become all things to all people so that by all possible means I might save some." And then it goes on to say in verse 23, "I do all this for the sake of the gospel, that I might share in its blessing." I've been in my church for 22 years, but my church was formed back in the 50s. 1958, I think our church building was constructed. And in 1958, when our church building was completed, something really interesting happened. People just came. They arrived. A new church was there, and people thought it was the right thing to do to come and attend and try out church. They even just sent their kids to our kids' work. Now, today in the UK, we need to just accept that that happens somewhat less, to say the least. The game has changed, and when I use the analogy or the word game, I don't mean that in a belittling way at all. When my kids were younger, they went to a swimming club and they learned all the different strokes, and I used to have to attend and just sit there watching them learn different strokes. One of the strokes that's always struck me as really interesting is butterfly stroke. Butterfly stroke is beautiful when done right, but when you're learning it, it looks tortuously difficult. And when you're watching young people learn this stroke, butterfly, one thought occurs to me more than anything else, which is why? Why would anybody invent butterfly stroke? Like, it's not as beautiful, arguably, as breaststroke. It's not as fast as front crawl. So really, if we're honest, what's the point? So I looked it up, and the answer is really simple. Butterfly stroke was invented by one person initially, and then developed a bit further by a couple of others to win medals at breaststroke. At the time, the rules for breaststroke were simply that your hands had to move in sync rather than countersync, and your feet had to move in sync rather than countersync as well. And so butterfly complied with those rules. And the people who first of all invented it, they really did start to win medals until the governing body, FINA, took a look at it and said, no, that's not really breaststroke and we need to rethink that. My question and my application of that is this: if we are in many ways losing the game, the rules of the game have moved on, and people won't just walk into our church anymore in the way that they used to, in what ways can we change what we're doing and look at doing it in more innovative and creative ways, maybe in addition to what we're currently doing? We've some answers to that in the life of our church, and I'd be really interested to know what other examples of good practice of trying something different there are or could be within churches, Baptist churches included, in the UK.